What on earth keeps you on this series or expose for longer than 30 seconds if I'm trying to connect well-known banks to child trafficking and abuse, or well-known celebrities, or if I'm saying something like, roughly 97% of our politicians, by all accounts, serve a master that's not the United States of America. Like, what keeps you listening to that? Welcome back. If you have not subscribed or you're new here, go ahead and please do subscribe on YouTube and hit the bell icon so YouTube actually sends you updates. This is just a YouTube video. This isn't part of our podcast feed, but it does dig into Epstein. If you have any interest in podcasting, legal or otherwise, we do all kinds of categories, but regardless, you can reach me at clerk@legalpodcasting.com with questions for nonprofits, businesses of all types. And welcome to the show. We've got a little bit of a phone call excerpt. I've got a clip from a really interesting interview this week, and then I've got some information off the cuff. Welcome to the show.
What was probably the one person that surprised you, whether it be angered you, whatever, the most? What was it?
I think Ghislaine Maxwell. I think because, and I'll give you one thing I keep hearing from victims over and over that makes me like sear with like rage, legitimate, like I'm changing my body chemistry, working on this 5 times a day, going from like rage to despair. But this example makes me want to put my damn head through a brick wall. And that's so many of these girls, right after somebody did something vicious to them without their consent, so many times the language immediately after that experience that they're having is that how it's even worse to be like, limping out of a old guy's bedroom and Ghislaine Maxwell's just grinning, watching, just standing there, just fucking grinning. I've heard that. Like, how do you identify with where that comes from? I can't. It makes me think the world is different than I always thought it was. And I never thought it was like peaches and cream, but it's a lot. And if you start in the 50s and if you start with the roots, it's a far more meaningful and disturbing story. And if you do a good job, I think the reason it's doing well, John, I came up with this today, because I had one of my clients yesterday was like, no offense, but why are people listening to you? Like, what makes you an expert? I was like, at the time, I was just like, I don't know. I guess 250,000 views makes me the expert. Like, or
no, I think that helps. But you're doing the research. That's how the initial people find.
More importantly, I'm dropping receipts from start to finish in most of these episodes in terms of referencing where the testimony was, whose book it was, whose affidavit it was, what FOIA release of White House records it was. I'm dropping where I got shit every 4 to 7 minutes and names, dates, corroborations. And so I sent her an answer today. I said, I think it's the over-the-top thoroughness. And I sent her an episode, but I didn't send her a link to the start. I sent her a link to the last minute. And it's just me going through my sources.
The question is, why do people care enough to listen to videos specifically from me on this topic? That's a question I've gotten in the last few days from a lawyer with a podcast who said, no offense, what makes you the expert? Why are all these people tuning in? And thank you, by the way. And I have 2 more episodes recorded. But this I have to put out. It's so applicable. I need some feedback in the comments. But are any of you normies? Are any of the people watching these Epstein series videos, for example, are, if I run through a short checklist, do you check these boxes? If so, awesome that you're watching me. I'm probably annoying you a little bit, so thank you. But do you check these boxes? Do you think Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? Do you know that the definition of vaccine was changed in 2021? Do you care that the definition of vaccine was changed in 2021? Would be another checkbox. What are your thoughts on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan? Do you think Osama bin Laden is responsible for what happened on 9/11? Are you aware that on 9/10/2001, Donald Rumsfeld announced that the United States was missing 2.3 trillion with a T? Did you know Donald Rumsfeld announced the United States was missing $2.3 trillion the day before 9/11? Presumed theft. What would you call it? Did you know? 2.3 trillion? So if you check all those boxes, like if you're like, yeah, of course Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Of course the story of 9/11 makes sense. What on earth keeps you on this series or expose for longer than 30 seconds if I'm trying to connect well-known banks to child trafficking and ABUSE, or well-known celebrities, or if I'm saying something like, roughly 97% of our politicians, by all accounts, serve a master that's not the United States of America. Like, what keeps you listening to that? Because I've had two conversations in the last 72 hours that are about what's going on. Why all of a sudden are people who wouldn't have this conversation or conversations in this realm, like, did you ever think that the government might be behind X? That kind of Thanksgiving crazy uncle stuff that I would argue an overwhelming majority of the people I come across in daily life do not subscribe to. But they're busy. They're busy. Like, you tell me you've got a favorite, child charity. The first thing I think in my mind is, I wonder what other charities they're associated to, and I wonder what board members on those charities have been indicted in child sex scandals. Now, if I think that and I look at it and there's something there goes 80 hours of my life. Who's going to do that? Who can have even a conversation about Jeffrey Epstein without going back 50 years and talking about OSS and the founding of the OSS, later to become the CIA, and its relationship with organized crime? But I think to most people, as soon as you expand the scope of a conversation beyond just what's been handed to them maybe from traditional media sources. Like, the other thing on the list is, like, can you sit through The View for 10 minutes? Can you watch The View for 10 minutes? If you can, your brain works entirely different than mine. And I believe you have a totally different consciousness of the world we live in than I do. I felt this weird thing for like 20 years since 9/11. Because half the world would talk to me and I could have real honest conversations, and half the world would use a phrase that was literally invented by the CIA to tell me that my suspicions about things like the CIA are unfounded and make me crazy. The person who asked me the other day, no offense, but why? What makes you the expert? Why would people listen to you? She used the phrase, "You're such a conspiracy guy." The phrase conspiracy theory was literally coined by the CIA as disinformation to discredit anybody who was questioning the narrative of the Kennedy assassination. I wonder if she knows that. I wonder if she knows that in telling me that I'm such a kook, she's literally using a phrase that was implanted in her by the actual systems of power that I sometimes find questionable. Not all the time, but if we're talking about something like child charities or Disney, maybe it's a weird phenomenon. Maybe it's because I've been legal podcasting. My immediate thought is, what's the worst scenario in that environment? What's the worst scenario with the melding of certain power structures, like children's entertainment and banks that have a history of being involved in child trafficking, or people who have a history of being involved in child trafficking? I immediately wonder what the bad person is thinking. Disney? Well, if I'm into kids, I might get a resume out. To me, that seems elementary. And I hope somebody's thinking, I guess you guys are all thinking worst case scenario, because it's just starting to look like so many people have shifted to the point where they're, and I think Israel's had a lot to do with it, because that's such a taboo subject. And again, an illustration of the systems of power that don't allow for honest communication. You've for my whole life, you're not really allowed to talk about Israel. Draw what conclusions you want from that. I find that questionable. Now a lot of people seem to wonder why was every member of the CDC board that shut down 40% of the black-owned businesses in this country, they're all Israeli citizens. So when I hear something like that, I have to ask, what's going on? And I'm a maniac, so I'll put 80 hours into it. But where are you guys coming from? Have you been into conspiracies for 20 years? Is this all just sort of coming to a head? It feels like it's coming to a head because we've been told the sky is green at a rate for the last 5 or 6 years that's unmatched in the 51 years that I've been alive. I could ask somebody, get back to our checklist, like during COVID, when they said things like natural immunity was racist, or math was racist, or pointing out that this is probably a bioweapon from a bio lab is racist. Like, I just am not the kind of person who can even sit through 3 exchanges of something that anti-intellectual and frankly, like, disrespectful on its face. Like, you can't say that to somebody that you don't think is a goddamn idiot and expect them to swallow it. And I think so many people were insulted in the last 6 years into taking a little more time and maybe asking, what is going on? 40% of black-owned businesses. Can you imagine if you could pin that on the Democrats or the Republicans? You'd win every election for the next 100 years. You shut down 40% of the black-owned businesses in the United States. Can't pin it on them, though. Can't punish them. Can't punish a bunch of Israeli citizens on the board at the CDC. You can just send a thank you letter to Rochelle Walensky, Israeli citizen. Yeah, keep your kids out of school. Shut your businesses down. Don't do long division. Just listen to us say numbers like 1 million. Whatever you do, don't fucking divide that by the population of the country, or you're a Nazi. We're giving away free cheeseburgers if you'll take the vaccine with the new definition of vaccine. New York City gave away cheeseburgers. I had an appointment to get the vaccine. Why didn't I get the vaccine? Because they started doing weird shit like saying natural immunity is racist, changing the definition of vaccine, and giving away cheeseburgers. So I'm like, what's going on? Hey, sometimes nothing's going on. But when you make it look like something's going on, I can't sit through that for like 5 minutes. I literally had to move out of New Jersey, for Christ's sake, during COVID. And I'm glad because, as you'll hear in the next episode I'm about to put out, New Jersey's like hey, come be a pedophile haven. New Jersey's like, hey, come have sex with children here. In comparison to some other states in terms of how they police and how they prosecute, it's bad. So I got to ask, what's going on, man? Seems like something's going on. And don't you feel like it's the sort of time investment, like it's a warm, fuzzy blanket? Like if you can turn on The View for 10 minutes and actually sit through it, you're living under a warm, fuzzy blanket. You're existing in a different consciousness than I'm guessing almost everybody who's sitting through more than 10 minutes of this video. You're literally existing in a different world. That's this warm, fuzzy blanket world. And you definitely don't have 80 hours to dig into one of the side topics in a niche conversation and you're maybe even in the system. You're in part of these, you're corporated up, or you're in the law enforcement system, or you're in the legal system itself. You're not going to see the puzzle pieces. You're in the puzzle. Shout out the normies who've come around in mass since being told the sky is green for 3 straight years during COVID. Those are just a bunch of examples where, can you sit through that? If you can, you and I live in a different universe. We don't see the same things. And we don't have the same level of curiosity about what's behind things. La-di-da, charity for children. Yeah? Have you looked at everybody they're associated with? Have you looked at their bank? Do you want to? You'll instantly be a conspiracy person if you do. Why? Because you'll know more than the normie you're talking to, and you're going to say something that sounds batshit crazy, even though you got it out of an affidavit or congressional testimony or a Senate hearing. Or if you told your friends 3 things that are verifiable about the CIA and programs they've run, they'll think you're crazy. But you could literally do the same thing about Anthony Fauci and experiments he's run on foster children. Most of us know about the experiments he's run on dogs, where he puts their head in a box and lets bugs eat their flesh. He's a weird dude, man. Remember when he was the villain of the AIDS epidemic? The villain. Did you see Dallas Buyers Club? That's about how Anthony Fauci's not a good guy. Yet did you see all the hippies marching in the street for him and for Pfizer? When the hippies are marching in the street for Pfizer, makes me say, what is going on? Do you have that weird feeling, like, especially during COVID, like, yeah, that person isn't even on the same planet I am. Like, wait, that person's down with them changing the definition of vaccine now? Now you're going to come up with a new definition? You want to know what the effective change of it was? It was that now it's defined as something that makes your body react. It used to be defined as it's something that gave you immunity. The old definition of vaccine was, it's a tool to create immunity, not an immune response. Now all vaccines are a tool to make an immune response. You want a list of immune responses? Do you? Fucking heart attacks. The negative side effects are on the immune response list, you goddamn maniacs. So they literally changed the definition of vaccine from this thing protects you from the thing, the virus, this thing protects you from the virus, to this thing's going to make your body do something in reaction. Oh, something like myocarditis? Literally every reaction your body has now to a vaccine, well, that's just what vaccines are, but only since 2021. Simpletons. Shit like that makes me say, hey, what's going on? And that's the difference. I think you were all the type maybe who are saying, what's going on? My one friend who called me 3 days ago, he's saying new. He's a new guy saying, what's going on? I couldn't have had some of these conversations with him a year ago. And then the following day, I have a conversation with a friend who's a lawyer, and she's the one saying, why does anybody care? I think they want to know what's going on. I appreciate your patience, and I know this wasn't well articulated, but there's a thing, the security blanket, and maybe the time restriction. But to get somebody who hasn't had the what's going on thought to be like, I don't know, once you have it, I think you have it. I will say that once you put it this way, once you've thought, what's going on? You're not going to sit through the View again. Oh, I digress. I hope there was some manner of effective communication in there. This is kind of a nebulous thing I'm really trying to get my hands around. But the influx of people who've been in my life who would not entertain my crazy uncle shit last year, who are now entertaining my crazy uncle shit. In other words, will now entertain what I discover every time I take an 80-hour investigative jaunt. Every time you call somebody a conspiracy theorist, you're saying, hey, sounds to me like you've read about 15 times more than I have. I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. That's all you're saying. That's all the fuck you're saying when you call someone a conspiracy theorist.
You know,
Yeah, and they're lawyers, so they should be able to. Yeah.
yeah, I'm using allegedly where necessary, but I mean, my factual references, there's meat on these bones. I would say to him, I'd say, oh, yeah, just make a list of what I got wrong. Let me know. Yeah, good fucking luck.
Lawyers are like, hey, just the facts, you know what I mean? Or, to a point. I gotta jump. Very interesting. Love it.
Yeah, man. So I'll report back. I'll try and talk to that guy tomorrow.
Yeah, let me know. I'm curious to see what he does.
All right, homeboy.
See ya.
Later.